What's up, y'all? I'm Sade. Welcome back to my Astro series, and we are going to dive into the beautiful third house today. What is the third house? Who rules the third house? And what planet likes to sit here? So, the third house is ruled by the sign of Gemini, and it is the house that Mercury loves to have its office in, as well as the sixth house, ruled by Virgo. We'll go deeper into that when we get to Virgo. Now, what does the third house even incorporate? Well, we spoke about Gemini and what Gemini is about. The third house is the house of how we develop our mind. Now, think about it. The first house is how we come into the world. The second house is how we decide what is mine, what do I have, and what do I want. And the third house is how we develop the mind of logic. How do we take what is around us and how do we learn the words to describe what is around us? And then how do we communicate towards ourselves and communicate back towards the people in our environment? If you think of the age group for the third house, the first house is usually the baby. The second house is when you get to that age of 1 or 2 and you're walking and grabbing and taking things. And the third house is really once a child starts to have play dates with other kids. Around that age of 2 to 4, you're maybe at the daycare or you're maybe starting preschool and you're learning about your environment. You're learning how to describe what is a chair. You're learning how to describe how do I use a chair? What does a chair mean to me? And that is the third house. The third house doesn't really get a lot of attention, but the third house is really crucial because it is the beginning stages of how we develop the mind, how we develop the mental state. And depending on what you may have in this house, can really determine mental illness, as well as a disconnect from the mind, as well as a disconnect from reality. Third house is really about the logical realm, what's physically around us, and how do we develop relationships with ourselves based off of our words and based off of the people around us. The third house is where we start to develop our speaking skills. Because Mercury sits here and Mercury is the planet of speech, that is around the time that a child begins to piece sentences together. Around that age of 2, 3, and 4, you're piecing things together, you're learning words, and you're finding your own meaning. Based off of what planet or zodiac sign is in this house can really signify the type of language you like to use and how your words can come across. So for example, if you have maybe Cancer in this house, you connect to your environment from a more emotional way. Things have a deeper meaning than just the logical meaning. Also, having Cancer in this house can signify that your words are very poetic. You like to speak from a place of feeling. You like to be careful about the words that you use to invigorate a certain type of emotion from people. And you really can gravitate and understand the emotional significance of your environment. The third house is about our environment. It's about our school, it's about our neighbors, it's about the park, it's about the library, everything that's around us and how that environment really shapes us as a child and we're developing. So if you have maybe, let's say, the planet Jupiter in this house, that can signify, a person being around a lot of educational people, a person really growing and learning a lot based off of, institutions. Maybe someone in their immediate household was a teacher, a professor, and really was rooted in their philosophy and their ways of learning broader visions about the world, because Jupiter signifies large institutions that help us to learn deeper and broader topics of the world. Maybe even having Jupiter here can signify a person who might have traveled a lot as a child, because the third house also rules short travel. So the travel that you took to go to your school, the travel that you took to go to church, the travel that you took to visit your friends for play dates, that's what the third house represents. So if you have a planet like Jupiter, which is the ruler of Sagittarius, Sagittarius is the opposite house, stimulating our external travels. It could be a person who did a lot of traveling as a child and was able to connect to their environment on a more global perspective, as well as their immediate environment close by. The third house rules our day-to-day learning. Something as simple as that can be How do I use a pen? How do I learn how to write? How do I learn how to draw? What's the purpose of this shirt? What's the purpose of this pants? What's the purpose of this room? That's the day-to-day learning. And besides ruling how we learn to speak and how we learn to acknowledge what's around us, the third house also rules how we listen, our listening skills, and our ability to take in what we're seeing, what we're observing, and what we're hearing, and how we process that. So it's very important to see what sign, what planet you have in this house, because it will also showcase, how do you listen? Do you listen? So maybe if you have Aries or Mars in this third house, you might be quick to act, quick to speak, quick to learn, but you might not process that well because you have that quick, fiery initiative energy. It might take you a longer time to process because you're so quick to act. Gemini is all about processing. What is our processing capabilities? That's what this third house represents. The reason why I find this house very important is because how you process the external world is really going to showcase how you move as you become an adult. And if you have a hard time processing things and have a disconnect of the reality, right? Third house is logic. It's not emotional, it's masculine energy, it's logic, it's direct. So if you have a very hard time connecting to your reality and processing reality, then it's going to showcase as you become an adult and your inability to connect the dots to things that happen in your life, connect to different experiences, or just be able to decipher between what's real, what's not real, what's important, what's not important, what's true, what's false. Because third house is ruled by Gemini, and Gemini is all about being adaptive to our environment, you want to see the element of the sign in this house. So if you have a fixed sign in this house, let's say maybe you have Leo or maybe you have Taurus in this house, you can have a fixed way of understanding your environment, a fixed way of connecting with your environment, and a very fixed way of thinking. So you really want to check into that because the third house is about being mutable. So if the third house is about being mutable and you have a fixed sign or maybe even a cardinal sign here, then you really want to work on your ability to adapt, to change, to learn, to listen to new perspectives, to hear another side, and to add in any changes that is necessary for you to move forward and develop better communication, better understanding, and better connective skills. All right, that's all we have for our third house. Remember, third house is ruled by the sign Gemini, and it is where Mercury loves to have its office. Next, we will go ahead and dive into the planet Mercury and what Mercury brings, what makes Mercury so important, and what you might be able to see depending on where you have Mercury in your chart. Thank you, and I'll see you for our next series.